Okay, we're starting the last Shiur on סימן Kuf I want to go through certain points that are relevant to Sifim Yidalf at Beis Gimel. Just in the Kodes are Nagel Lemaise, and we will then move on to Kuf Tzadik Zayin. Next year is going to be on Kuf Tzadik Zayin. Mr. Hashem. Sif Yud Aleph, the Mechaber tells you that the woman does have Hefsek Tahara on essentially what's the fourth day of her Re'iyah. She has to wait 6 oinus, 72 hours. And because we have a suffix on one, we do 4 days. So we do on the fourth day, that's when she could, end of the fourth day, she could do Hefsek Tahara. Then the fifth day becomes the first day of Shiur Nekim. Rama says you have to add in one more day. Yeah, we do 5, we don't do 4. He mentions that some women which were machmer even up to 7 days, and if you look in the Ben Ish Chai, and the Piske Ben Ish Chai and Hilchos Nida, which collects from the rest of his Sfarim, he does mention that minhag in certain places in Iraq in his days. It was still common for certain women to wait 7 days before doing Hefsek Tahara. Because that's a minhag. He didn't say that you have to, but he writes it as a minhag. But today the Sfarim already go based on Vadi Yosef. Most of them that we go just like Ashkenazim Yotzim Bi'adrama. For the Sfarim it's Beis Yosef, and you do 4, and there's no reason to be machmer even on 5. If she sees a kasem, same thing. You also wait 5 days. V'chein b'mdinos elu v'ein l'shanas. Just an interesting point over here. We're saying that you count. Now we know that when you count the 5 days, let's say if she sees right before Shkia, that counts as day 1. Right? That counts as day 1 of the 5. Over here, we don't go based on what we learned previously. Just important to note, previously when we're talking about Hefsek Tahara, we said you have to wait until, if the city does Ma'ariv earlier than Shkia, then there are opinions that you're stuck. When it comes to this, you follow based on the clock, you don't follow based on the Ma'ariv in your town. Now, if she stopped before, she didn't know about these 5 or 4, and she stopped on day 2, and she started counting, and she was Peiletes Shechva Zera, because we need the 3 days is for Peiletes Shechva Zera, which is Metame. She was Peiletes. She's only Poisel 1 day, not 7 days. Doesn't have to restart all the 7. Why is that? We say when we mention it, when you do Tzufim is only talking about Dam and not Peiletes Shechva Zera. It's an important point to remember. It's going to come across a few more times in this Shiur. If 6 oinus passed, then even if she's Peiletes Shechva Zera, she's no longer, that's not Metame here and not Soiser, because it's already considered Saruach. It's important to point out, as you're going to look in the Piske Din of the Talmud of Tzemach Tzedek, you're going to see that he defines this chumrah of day 5 as a chumrah b'loi tam, Sif Chavches, Sif Lamed, Sif Lamed Aleph, and Sif Lamed Beis. He repeats that line, chumrah b'loi tam, chumrah, and based on that, to cause a chumrah b'loi tam, so he's very makel in certain scenarios. It takes with the kav that's more makel in certain practical scenarios that are going to come up, which I'm going to discuss. But just important to point that out. That's how he defines it.
Why is it b'loi tam? It says in the Taz that the original tam for it, even though it's very far-fetched.
So that's what he considers.
They mishmashes and they'll make it twice.
Right, so he says that's a far-fetched, and that's why he considers it a chumra b'lo tam, even though there has that reason, but it's a.
It could be extended even if they weren't Shabbos, even if it didn't start in the process.
Right, so that's why, because we're machmer on all, we add on all these things, he calls it the chumra b'lo tam. Now, regarding finding a kesem, he does point out to you that there is a machlokes regarding regarding a kesem, does she have to wait 5 or not? The machlokes shach and taz, he does mention the minhag is to wait 5 days even by a kesem, and he also points out there's no difference whether baila ba'ir or not when it comes to waiting 5 days. Also remember that, because I'm going to get back to it soon. Now, when it comes to dam psulim, you never wait 5 days, you wait 4 days. We learned that in Kufta de Gimel. And we discussed then that the category of dam psulim continues until the pain subsides, or there's which we discussed then what the Tzemach Tzedek brings about that. So as long as that she's still in the category of dam basulim, if she's going to go to mikveh because of a re'iyah of dam basulim, she's only going to count 4 and 7, not 5 and 7. But when could you get around the 5? There's a Shloah Kodesh which says that a woman who that her tefillah, leil tefillah, falls out on Friday night after 2 days of Yom Tov. So part of a 3-day Yom Tov, we call a 3-day Yom Tov. It's a Thursday, Friday, Shabbos. Okay, and her leil tefillah falls out on Friday. So he says that if she's going to that she could start Shiva Nekiyim 1 day early, and that way to be lekarev hachafifa l'tefillah, because you do chafifa net of Yom Tov, and that's going to be 48 hours, 40 or 50 hours until tefillah. To make it closer, she'll go 1 day earlier. She'll do 4 and 7 instead of 5 and 7. As part of the story of the Shloah, it mentions that she was not with her husband the night before the Re'iyah. So essentially what you're doing is you're counting, you could say that the Shloah is referring to that you counted the night before as the first of the 5 days, even though l'chatchila we never do that. And there's a machlokes how to understand the Shloah. The Toras HaShlomim holds that only if lo shimsha. The Siddur Tahara holds even if yes shimsha. We still do only, in such a scenario, we only do 4 and 7. When you look at the Piskei Dinim to the Tzemach Tzedek, to the Talmud of the Tzemach Tzedek, he does bring it in Sif Lamed, v'yesh mesifin lahakel, and he brings the Siddur Tahara, and that's how he concludes the Seif. And he adds, like we said, v'sharei ma shemamtinim heyom machriyo chumra b'lo tam k'dleil ve'eino kedai laharchik b'shvil zeh chafifa min haTefillah. So that's how he concludes. So he is noted to be mekel when it comes to the Piskei Dinim to the Tzemach Tzedek. To the Talmud of Tzemach Tzedek, he is mekel that even if we have this scenario where the chafif is going to be so far from the Tevilah that you could do 4 and 7, not 5 and 7, even if Shimsha the night before she started her Re'iyah. Now, it's the same thing, the Chochmah Sodom or Chashulchan also paskin like that.
Is that the minhag of Chabad? 7, right?
No, minhag Chabad is 5 and 7, but the 4 and 6, same pointing out 4 and 7 if you need to. Now, what happens if he says that the Piskei Dinim continues, calls the l'chatchila, b'diavad, if she was not with her husband for a long time, and she did have sektare on the day that she stopped seeing, and she counted and was less than 5 and 7, and she counted and she did tefillah and everything else. And she was already Shimsha and Baila, she was already with her husband. She doesn't have to to complete the days that she missed. Because we're going to see in the next Sif in Shulchan Aruch, there are times when you have to complete. If you made a mistake, you have to complete. So he's already introducing to you, before you get to Sif in Shulchan Aruch, which tells you if you make a mistake, this is next Sif, if you make a mistake, you're going to have to redo the day that you missed. You have to wait 72 hours and wait the extra day 2 days that you made a mistake on and go to mikveh again. He's telling you, b'diavad, if she was not with her husband a long time before then, before her re'iyah, and then she saw a short re'iyah and she didn't have tahara right away, and then she went, if it was a small re'iyah, a day or two or whatever it is, and she went to mikveh and she was with her husband, you don't have to go to mikveh. Why? You don't have to do it again. Why? He says, maybe she became pregnant. And if she became pregnant and you're going to make her go to mikveh again, they're going to walk around saying, oh, this kid is a benanida, is a pogum. Why? Because his mother had to go to mikveh 2 days after she became pregnant with him. 4 days after she became pregnant with him. And because the waiting, when there was no shimsha, is gzeira otu shimsha, and then he continues again, b'frat b'isofas yemahei shu kim'at chumra b'loi tam, again chumra b'loi tam, b'kahai gavna sheyesh lochosh lalaz en lahachmer. Another place, if you can be choishesh to laz, you are not going to be machmer. So again, but the Eved, not machmer in such a scenario when she was already with her husband. It's a very important klal to remember.
Even less than 4 days.
If she was not with her husband for a long time before. Starts, lo shimsho zman mizman rav. Not that stam 4 days and 7. Talking about lo shimsho mizman rav. Right, why is this relevant? There is a discussion. The Bach brings that if the husband is not in town, and there's no chashash that he was with her, he brings the Trumas Hadeshen, he discusses whether Trumas Hadeshen is Machmer or Meiko, and the Bach himself explains that the Trumas Hadeshen is Noite L'Hakel, it's on Sifid Beis, Noite L'Hakel, and he even says that that's Mashma from the Ramah, because when the Ramah says that you don't make a difference, he says Shimsha or not Shimsha, but he doesn't say Afilo Ein Baila Ba'ir like he mentions in other places in this Siman. Therefore, if Baila Ein Ba'ir, and she has a re'iyah, she could be makel to go even before 5 and 7. And he says, the lashon that the Bach brings is, however, Taz and Shach disagree with him. So, Lamaisa, we're not making it. But it's important to know this, together with what I just pointed out to you, what it says about Leishimshim is man rav also. There's certain scenarios where you have to recognize there are opinions which are mekel. If the chashash is going to turn out to be a chashash laz, and she was definitely not mashamish for zman rav before, then, and she was ready, she saw and she counted and she went to mikveh and she was ready with her husband, and the day later she comes and asks that of, then you are not going to do something which is going to be moitzi laz. So, if so obviously, come bring us another question. If a woman is going to mikveh after she gave birth, right away, that's not a re'iyah. There are certain opinions that even in that scenario, if there is a time of need, some people will, if there's a certain reason to be mekel 4 and 7, l'maisa we don't paskin like that. Yeah, so kesem and ein bailo ba'ir, kesem in itself is a chumrah, to wait 5. If it's ein bailo ba'ir, and then some people say if the kesem is a kesem that you're machmir because you're from a community, I forgot who I saw also from one of, that if the reason why you're machmir in the kesem is because, if the reason you became tamei in the kesem is because the rav that you went to is machmir in the color brown, and that's why you went, I forgot who I saw it by, then also you don't have to wait 5. It's one is enough. Because also, it's a chumrah on top of a chumrah on top of a chumrah on top of a chumrah, you don't have to wait so many days.
What do you think about birth? She wants to do Shiva Nikiyim 4 days after birth?
No, if there's a certain scenario where she wants to do Shiva Nikiyim 4 days after birth, yeah. Not 4 days after birth, I mean 4 days,
Same if it's in her days of Dam Torah.
She sees, Dam Torah, and she sees, and
Once she comes
not right after birth. I'm saying is when she's after she went to make it first time, and then for whatever reason she saw blood. She never saw a period yet.
Right.
So she's not back to being a niddah. She's Mesulekas Damim, even a real Mesulekas Damim. Not what we call Mesulekas Damim 24 months. A real Mesulekas Damim. She hasn't seen the period
Is
yet.
it only if it's within the Beit Tehar or even after that?
No, even afterwards. I'm saying is because she did not see. She saw a kasem which was bigger than the Gris.
מתי שאומרים כאילו מכירים?
אף פעם לא מכירים.
מתי שמכירים? זה ל4 ימים או אפילו יותר?
תלוי. דרך כלל 4 ימים. כן, בגלל שאז זה כמו המחבר. כשמכירים 4 ימים. We're talking about here when it comes to kasem, or when it comes to ein ba'alabit, it could be more than that.
The Tzemach Tzedek, he like he said, that he says that even counting the 5th day is a Churma below time.
Talmud is a Tzemach, yeah?
Yeah. So how do we paskin like the Tzemach Tzedek, even if you say it's a Churma below time, but the Ramah, the Shach, the Taz,
He follows all of them. He follows all of them. He doesn't say you do 4 days. He says you do 5 days. But because it's a chumrah b'lo tam, so when you have scenarios where you have a reason, strong reason to be mekel, so you could attach that to it also.
But not stop.
Not stop, no. A woman has a short aflaga. Now, everybody knows, or I don't know if everybody knows, but for a woman to become pregnant, the bia has to be within a very short time frame from when the egg is released. So if a woman has a very short period, 2 days every time, then her time of ovulation could be 1 or 2 days before she goes to mikveh. By the time she's going to go to mikveh, ovulation is finished, she's not going to become pregnant. It's a very common shiloh. Today, we have pills which could regulate the period. There are some Haredi practitioners which will give you a collection of vitamins which could also regulate the period. I don't remember them now, but I did learn them in the past. They'll tell you the whole thing. It's to be able to regulate the period, so she should be able to see normal, and then she should be able to go to mikveh bismano. However, but before all these pills were invented, there was a machlokes how to deal with such a scenario. What is going to happen? She's never going to become pregnant. It's a big problem. It's mokem migun, mokem mitzvah. Yeah, so you have a Mincha Shlomo and Mincha Yitzchak. They say that you should not she should not do the hefsek tahara a day early. Definitely not 2 days early. Sometimes it could be 2 days off. If it's 1 day, we can say if it's 1 day off, then just a known thing. If she's going to do a bdika a day before she's expecting her period, there is a chance that she's going to see something which a certain level will be metame, and then you're going to start the 5 days a day early. However, so they say
That's the Mincha Shlomo?
No, the Mincha Shlomo says she should Mincha Shlomo says let her not go to mikveh now. Stay tamei until the next period starts. Then she doesn't have to wait 5. Then she'll go to mikveh on time, and she's not going to be able to. And then she'll be able to become pregnant. Basically, he's going to be separated from her for 5 weeks instead of 2 weeks, 5.5 weeks.
And then there's no Yaman, but what about the Sign King?
Shiva Nakim for sure there is, yeah.
What?
Shiva Nakim for sure there is, because she's waiting again for the next period. Now, but the Igris Moshe and the Be'er Moshe, which is the Betziner, and some others do hold that if she's not with her husband 3 days before she sees her period, in such a scenario, which is Mokem Migun, Mokem Mitzvah, she should not be with her husband 3 days before she expects the period. Then she's going to wait the 2 days of the period. She'll do have sektara and start counting in 7 days, and it's fine. So it's even. We're not playing around with the 5 days. Yeah? It's not like we're saying she only waits 4 days from Bia. We're playing around with how to count the 5 days, when to place them. Because of Lei Plug, we say that you're not supposed to do it until the period starts. So over here, and we don't say, oh, she was purged from her husband. They ask each woman, when was the last time you were with her husband? But in scenarios where you have Mokem Migun, Mokem Mitzvah, or we have Itzas Laz, or Bailan Ba'ir, or certain scenarios where you do need to, so then you call it playing around with the counting of the 5 days. We're running a kesem, I mentioned already before. Now, when a woman becomes tamei in middle of Shiva Nekiyim, starts a new flow, obviously she doesn't have to wait 5 and 7. Because the whole reason why you have to wait 5 is because Plet Shechva Zera. Over here it's not Shech, she's Plet Shechva Zera. Or hopefully it's not Shech, we're going to see soon. Hopefully. If a woman, her husband has to leave town on the 11th day, 4 and 7. And he is going to be gone. Shas Tshuvas Mari Yecheskel, Chassid Sharov, Rebbe. And he paskins that L'chatchile, obviously not do 4 and 7. But if it's Tzorech Gadol, he says, you could do 4 and 7. What's a Tzorech Gadol? Leave it up to the Rav. The Rav is going to determine what's a Tzorech Gadol. If you want my understanding of what's a Tzorech Gadol, if the husband has a trip that he cannot change, and this was scheduled a long time before, it's not possible to change it, he's going out of town for a long time, he's not going to be back for a significant amount of time, then it's considered Tzorech Gadol. If Sachakal is going to go out of town on a business trip for 3 days or 2 days, then I don't know if any Rav would consider Tzorech Gadol, but in today's day and age you never know, and some people might consider Tzorech Gadol. You have to look at the person that's asking the question. Sometimes if you have a suffix that this might cause something to be a asura, then that also could become a Tzorech Gadol. When on the flip side you have something which is less, which is what we call Chumra B'lei Tam, or Kein Chumra B'lei Tam, or something which is, this is Shikul Das of a Rav. Another interesting shaila that comes up, if a doctor prohibits the woman from being with her husband, and it's been a while, and now she's going to mikveh. So Igros Moshe holds, and Moshe Feinstein holds, still have to be machmer, loy plug. The Beir Moshe says you don't have to be machmer in certain scenarios, and if I recall correctly, Tarak Halacha brings Hashem, the Shevet HaLevi, also you don't have to be machmer in such a scenario. That is 4 and 7 instead of, or even less, whatever the situation is. It means not to be machmer, the Rav will decide. See if
you could eliminate the whole.
Yeah, eliminate anything. Yeah?
Besides the Shuvah, the Talmud said that they need B'lei Tam. Do we find any case that somebody was Mekel, not to do 4?
Not to do 4? I mentioned if she was B'diavad. Yeah. Now we're going to move to Sifyud Beis. Sifyud Beis says, if a woman made a mistake one day, Ta'aso, the minion Sfiraso, and one day, she was off by 1 day. Instead of doing 5 and 7, she made a mistake. She miscalculated the time, ended up 4 and 7. Or she made a mistake 2 days. She did 3 and 7. Whatever, she didn't know. Whatever the reason is. Or because she wasn't with her husband, she didn't know. She made a mistake. She counted 7. She went to mikveh. She was with her husband. The Chaber writes she has to wait 6 full oinus, 72 hours. And then she does the day that she missed, she's mashlim, it's 1 day to be clean, or 2 days, whichever days she missed, 1 or 2, and then she goes to mikveh. Important, why you give the example? Mechaber is example of 1, Tas says even 2, but nobody says example 3. Why is that? Because you have a different problem. If it's 3 days, you have a problem with the amount of bdikas. You have to make sure that you have less than 5 days, like we learned earlier. Less than 5 days from one bdika to another. No more than 5 days in the middle. So you have that problem. So you just have to make sure there's 5 days over there when she does it. And like we said before, you do not need Ritzufim. All you need is, Ritzufim is only, what we say, Shiva Nekim Ritzufim is only when she's nitma because of dam, not when she's nitma because of something else. Over here, that's why you don't need the Ritzufim over here. Does she need another hefsek tahara? Right? The Aruch HaShulchan says that she does need a hefsek tahara. However, Shasuvas Rivad and the Gufei Halachis brings and discounts it and says that it doesn't make any sense why she would need a new hefsek tahara before she starts this 1 day that she missed. Doesn't say anywhere that when she said she needs to be mafsik betahara. There's no chashash dam, but there's no need to be mafsik. And that's why he says you don't need to do a hefsek tahara. And do you have to wait if she does? And obviously you don't have to wait 5 days, right? You only have to wait 3 days. Why not 5 days? You need to wait. He says the Piskadim Tzemach Tzedek brings Yishain. He says. When she's talking about when she was not with her husband's Zman Rav again, like before. She was not with her husband's Zman Rav before the first time, and then that's how she made a mistake. If she would be with her husband, she probably wouldn't make a mistake. In such a scenario, you don't have to wait 5, you only have to wait 4 like the Mechaber. Again, you have to wait you have to do like the Mechaber. This brings the name of the Shach, that's how he paskins. In Seif Yud Gimel, it says if a woman was with her husband and she saw Riyah and she made a hefsek and she wants to start counting right away, it says she's mekaneach oisimokim yafe yafe, or b'moichei beged lahafut kol hazera, or she washes tirchis v'mayim chamim, and that's going to be mafut all the zera, and she could start right away. The 7. Yeah, v'yesh, the Rama right away points out, v'yesh ayimrim she'ein bekin. Yes, we say we're not baki in how to do, what does not baki mean? We're not baki, how much you have to clean, how hot the water has to be, all these details to be able to do it. And b'meila, ein lismoich v'hachi nohu v'kol ha'peres geder, shochenu nachosh. There's Dr. Rama. But this is talking about Shimsha V'rasa. What if we're talking about Shitasa B'minyan, the previous Seif? Does this trick work? So the Tahara writes on this, Hasoymech L'Hakel V'yifsid. Doesn't say Shapasan like that. He says Hasoymech L'Hakel V'yifsid. However, the majority of the other ones hold that you have to still wait 4 or 5 days. You can't just do this cleaning. The Piskadim of the Tzemach Tzedek brings both shittas, and he says first he starts with the ones that are machmer, and he says yashemlim, v'yashemlim, the second yashemlim, and that's how he concludes this topic. He brings the Tahara as a second yashemlim to be mekel also. Now, where does this come into play? I want to conclude with a short shiur. Zayin and Kuf Tzadik Ches. We're going to try to do, I want to finish Chassidus and Tvila. If you did not finish Kuf Tzadik Vav yet, please make sure to finish Kuf Tzadik Vav by tomorrow, Wednesday. There will be a shiur on Kuf Tzadik Zayin.